Hello. Sorry about that. I'm looking today at a couple of things that are going to be important for you, not just in this paper, in Unit 3 paper that we're doing, this Epiphany paper, but also for most anything you write. One of those things is time markers. Now, I have posted at the bottom, towards the bottom of Unit 3, the handouts. There's one that's it's a time marker sheet, and then there's one that is transitions rules. Okay, those would be helpful for you to have while we're doing this. So pause me, go get them, come back. One of the things that comes up in writing for someone else is how long things take, or what's the sequence of events, or how long ago was this. And we're usually pretty good at giving the big picture things. You know, this was 10 years ago, this was, whatever. But within the paper itself, within the story itself, there will be passage of time. Sometimes that passage of time is very short. Um, Sometimes that passage of time is years and years. And your audience needs to know that. They need to know kind of where you are in your life, what you are doing, how long does it take, where the pauses come in. And time markers are those words and phrases that keep your audience on track with your story. You can write without them, but your audience will not be happy with you. And that's part of what we write for, is to keep our audience happy and reading along. We use words like first, second, third, next, last, later, now. But there are a whole bunch of things that we can use to enhance our papers, to help our readers get from piece to piece. And they also a lot of times work as transitions, which is why I'm going to talk about transitions when we get to the end of this. Things that we can use to explain that something else is happening. One of the words that seems kind of weird to think of as a time marker is when. Sometimes we think about it as a question, but usually when we're writing, we'll say, when we came over that next hill. It's not really a definite time, but it's showing somebody, it's showing our reader that this is a significant moment. And so it doesn't have to be, 5 minutes later, or, 5 years later. It's when this happened, then. And in your Epiphany paper, that's going to be a big deal. On the time marker sheet, there's an example here from Luke chapter 2, 51 to 51. I think that reference is a little off. Anyway, in the example that we have here, the audience that Luke is writing to, basically Jews in the 1st century AD, they would have known the duration of the Feast of Passover. They would know it lasted a week, that it happened every year, and that folk tended to travel together in large groups, both for company and ease, but also for security. And it's not unusual for, the group of family to have, 40 or 50 people, multiple wagons or, conveyances or carts or whatever, and a lot of kids. We have to remember that in this era, this is long before birth control, not to be crass or anything, but there were a lot of kids running around. And so this particular example is taken from Luke chapter 2, and this is when Jesus was in the temple, went to Passover with his parents, probably for the first time, because it says when he was 12, which is a traditional age for Jewish young people. At that point, just boys, but now boys and girls. They go to Jerusalem, and when they spent their week there, they're coming back home, and they're a day's journey, and they realize he's not with them. And so they start asking around, trying to figure things out, and they end up going back to Jerusalem. Okay, so this is a day or two later, at least 2 days later, and they find him in the temple. Okay, Most everybody who's been to Sunday school at all probably knows this. And the first example is stripped of really any mention of time past or time going, okay, except for the day's journey thing. The second one, and I've bolded those, has all the time markers in it. It makes it much easier to read. It shows us kind of the passage of time more vividly, and it makes it more interesting because we know X happened because of Y, kind of thing. It is the same basic story, but version 2 gives us more to go on, so we better understand the story. Make sure your story has at least 3 time markers in it. The other piece of this is the transitions. And I'm sure you've had training in this before, but there are 2 basic types of transitions. One is a single word or maybe 2 words together, in addition, as a consequence, those kinds of things. But they all have purpose. And you can't just start every paragraph with however or furthermore, because that's not what the paragraphs are always doing. And so on this transition worksheet, single word or short phrase transitions are type 1 because they're easy. Things like a simple connection such as well, furthermore, additionally, okay. If something logically follows, we did A and now we're going to do B. Therefore, consequently, as a consequence. A contrasting idea, however, on the other hand, nevertheless, even so, yet. And then order of importance, first, second, third, most important, to a lesser degree, that kind of thing. Those are pretty easy to use. Not that they're not good to use, it's just that we can do those fairly easily without having to rewrite anything, because I know how much you guys like to rewrite things. The second transition, though, is more sophisticated. It's something that better writers use. And so it is basically to take an idea or a phrase from the last sentence or the last couple of sentences from the paragraph before, the first paragraph, and use it as part of the thesis sentence in the second paragraph. And you've got an example there from The Emperor's New Clothes. The idea of the soldiers being willing to lose honor gets replayed in the first sentence of the second paragraph. The king, though, would want to preserve his honor. And so they're talking about the same idea, but now they're going to show you what the king would do as opposed to what the soldiers would do. Both of these types of transitions are necessary to help your reader go from idea to idea. And it's not just at the beginning of a paragraph. Sometimes within your paragraph itself, you need to shift your idea with a however, or explain that what comes next is as a result of. Okay, so therefore, consequently. And I want you to get familiar with using these. I want you to use these a lot, maybe mess them up a few times and figure out why you did them wrongly. There's a lot of really good ideas here to try to work through. And the more you play with them, the better writer you're going to be in the long run. So if you have questions about time markers or transitions, you do have the handouts, but you can also email me. So have a good day.